Thank you, Eric, for joining us today at EJable. I'm very excited to hear about your stories here in Japan since you've been here in two different stages of your life, if I may say that. So if you could begin with your introduction, I'm very happy to get the interview started.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Eric. I'm currently a senior technical product manager at one of the major tech companies here in Tokyo. I've actually recently returned to Japan for the second time of my life. I started my career in Japan back in 2013, stay
Mhm.
here 2015. And then after spending some time back in the United States where I came from, I felt it was the right time for me to return to Japan, both personally and professionally. So I
Mhm.
moved to Japan about 3, 4 months ago.
Okay.
And since then, I've been, very happy with my choice to return to Japan.
Okay. And what brought you back to Japan this time after such a long period away from Japan?
Yeah, so currently, I am, currently with my current role at Amazon Japan as a senior product manager.
Mhm.
I was given a choice to relocate to New York or Tokyo.
Mhm.
Uh, or I was actually working in the LA office where I spent about 8.5 years
Okay.
since I, yeah. But when it was time for me to sort of make a decisions, I sort of thought about it in terms of which city would give me a better quality of life, both
Mhm.
in terms of career growth and personal life.
Mhm.
And then I was able to make a decision on coming to Japan.
Mhm.
Uh, Personally, I think everyone knows that Tokyo is one of the top cities in the world, one of the biggest metropolitan area in the world.
Mhm.
But despite their reputation, I think it offers a really great environment
Okay.
for raising a family with a
Okay.
relatively reasonable cost of living.
Mm.
I recently became a father actually. Since I arrived in Japan, I'm now a father of a small baby.
Mhm.
And to me, access to and cost of childcare, daycare, and convenience and safety as a young
Mhm.
parent, that's a really big considering factor when
Mhm.
making a decision about where to live and where to work. And
Mhm.
to offer that a lot. And also, there's so many places to travel in Japan domestically.
Mhm.
As a young parents, you have to think about, how would it be like traveling with kids
Yeah.
and a family. And I think Japan, even beyond Tokyo, there's a lot of great places and fun things to do within Tokyo without having to take a plane, which becomes a really difficult as a young parent. So personally, I think I was really excited about moving to Tokyo, knowing that I will be a parent.
Mhm.
Uh, and career-wise, I think Tokyo and Japan offers like a really exciting career growth opportunity.
Okay.
Um, in the States, there are many different industries scattered around different cities.
Mhm.
Uh, New York tends to focus on financial industry and fashion industry. LA more entertainment,
Mhm.
and maybe San Francisco and Seattle more on the big tech companies.
Mhm.
So if you want to work in a particular field, you have to move to a very different parts of the
Right.
country. I think Tokyo is a really exciting choice for career because all the major industries are in one place, which
Mm.
is here. So whether it's about your desire to move around different industry and different companies, Tokyo gives you access to many different world without
Mhm.
having to go around or um, having kind of having kind of sort of limited to the city that you're currently living in. Yeah.
Right. And how would you, yeah, what did you think about like the working culture of maybe the difference between New York and Tokyo? Is it something very different or not so much?
I think that's a really good question. That's a good question. I think in terms of they're both very similar in a sense. It's the very biggest city
Yeah.
and moves very fast. But I do think in terms of like the people do you meet after work,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Oftentimes back in the US, because each city is so limited to a specific industry, your social life is also tied to people from those industry.
Mm.
Where what I really like about life in Tokyo is that you really get to meet and interact with different people from different backgrounds, even
Mm.
if even if you're not from the same industry. So I think that's part of the life in Tokyo that I really enjoy in terms of both career and professionally. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Then could you explain to us more about your position as the product manager?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about product management, which is a career that I've developed over the course of over the course of my time since I've actually came to Korea. Since I came to Japan. Sorry, not Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know about what product management was until I
Mm-hmm.
actually went to Tokyo or Japan last time, back in 2013. I really got to learn about different field in the IT industry.
Okay.
Um, and then it developed my interest for me to grow as a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really good really good learning experience for me. Product management is really like it's a role that bridges gap between customers and engineering team, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
uh, there's a limited number of engineers that each company has, and how do we make decisions with
Mm-hmm.
those limited number of engineers to prioritize what brings the most impact to
Mm-hmm.
our business.
Okay.
Of course, it would be nice if you can add these functions to our website or these
Yeah.
features to our web, but unfortunately, we have limited time and we have limited, human resources,
Yes.
engineering resources, and data analysts, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But product management is really about how do you work with the both business team and the engineering team to make a
Mm-hmm.
decision on which projects that we should prioritize
Mm-hmm.
to make the most impact to the company.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and then it's a really popular career, a tech
Mm-hmm.
career in the States. But I do feel that the role is a little bit less established in Japan.
Okay.
But there's a lot of growing needs in Japan for good product managers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an exciting time to be, especially markets like Japan, which is a big market that all the companies in the world wants to try to win. But Japan is such a unique market
Mm-hmm.
with a high barrier to entry. It's both in terms of language barrier and cultural barrier. So it's, no more companies, global companies are
Mm-hmm.
looking to hire good product managers to be
Yeah.
able to penetrate Japanese market. So it's really
Mm.
exciting to be in Japan as a product
Okay.
manager. Yeah.
And if you just touched upon a little bit about the need of learning Japanese here, as a product manager in the big global company, uh,
Mm.
do you use Japanese in your daily life?
Hmm. No, that's a really good question. I think the answer to that question is it depends. If you're working more with an internal team that
Uh-huh.
speaks mostly within the engineering, or who doesn't who don't have who doesn't necessarily have to be Japanese, who
Mhm.
doesn't have to be necessarily that doesn't necessarily have to be fluent in Japanese,
Mhm.
then your expectation of speaking Japanese is much lower.
Yeah.
To me, because I have learned Japanese since I was young,
Hmm.
I am business fluent in Japanese,
Okay.
which has been really helping me a lot.
Hmm.
It was not a requirement but I try to speak in Japanese as much as possible to our business team,
Okay.
because many of our business teams, their native language is not English.
Hmm.
So we work better if I am able to speak Japanese to them.
Okay.
But with the engineering team, I speak English, and that has
Okay.
been a really good mix for me personally. Yeah.
I see. I'm just curious, and I'm sure the people watching this are also curious. As a
Mm,
product manager, do you need to have a background in both business and engineering?
mm, mm, mm. That is a really good question. There are, that's a $1 million question. There are, uh, it would be ideal if you have
Mm.
if you have background in both. But the reality is most people they start their career either from a business side
Oh,
or from
okay.
a human side, right? And then they slowly transition
Yeah.
to each other. I personally came from a business side and
Mm-hmm.
I became more technical. I acquired more technical skill through grad school. Actually, I went to
Okay.
pursue data analytics master's program. And then I became more of a data analyst, a data scientist, and then
Mm-hmm.
I've transitioned from business to data to product management.
Okay.
But many people that actually come from software engineering background
Mm-hmm.
uh, or data science background, and either by going to a business school or by working closely with a business team, they
Mm-hmm.
transition to product management, which requires both, which is helpful to have both side of the skills. Yeah.
Great.
Mm.
Then maybe just touching a bit more in your career here in Japan, do you have any goals that you have for yourself for the time you're here in Japan?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. That's a goal, right? I think the goal now is to try to sort of specialize in internationalization,
Uh,
um, internationalization of the product. So far, I've been able to gain a really valuable skills back in the States, but
mhm.
unfortunately, I was not able to focus on my Japan background, and I
Mhm.
almost felt like it was a little bit uh, in Japanese it's called mottainai, but it's a
Mhm.
little bit shameful that I didn't
Yeah.
get to. I spent 2+ years of my life in my 20s working in Japan, becoming very familiar with Japanese language and
Yeah.
culture and customers, but I didn't really get to use that back in the States.
Mhm.
So this time when I came to Japan, I wanted to build product features and launch features that
Yeah.
is unique to Japanese market,
Mhm.
uh, grow sort of my expertise in the internationalization of product
Okay.
through my career in Japan, which I was not able to do my first time
Mhm.
in Japan.
Okay. Then
Mhm.
I'm a bit curious because a lot of people that I've interviewed mentioned that it's hard to find good friends in Japan because, the local Japanese people tend to be closed off, and so you tend to have friends who are international people like you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Have you kept in touch with with your coworkers who you used to work with back in 2013?
That's a very good question. To me, actually, that was one of the biggest reasons that when it came to my lack of fear to move back to Japan. The friendship that I made, my first time in Japan,
Hmm.
has evolved into a lifelong friendship.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, I think um, it's always easier to make new friendships the earlier or younger you are, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Yes.
When I first came to Japan, I was still in my 20s, mid
Hmm.
20s, and I through the company I joined, where there were both many like-minded people in
Hmm.
the similar age group who move to a new country and seeking new friends because they don't have family and friends
Yeah.
here in Japan. It really created an environment. Hey, I actually want to make friends,
Mm-hmm.
um, in Japan. And what's nice about Japan is this could be very different from country to country, but in the
Hmm.
States, there's a kind of a clear boundary between people you interact at work versus
Hmm.
people who hang out after work.
Yeah.
So you try to avoid being too close or too open to your coworkers in the
Hmm.
States.
Hmm.
People tend to go home right away, right?
Yeah.
Spend time with their real friends and family. In Japan, at least, when I experienced Japan for the first time, it was a lot of mixture of
Okay.
like work friends became my close friends outside of work. And it's also I think a big part of it is because culture in Japan is like that,
Mm,
even local Japanese people, coworkers,
hmm.
they go out drinking with their
That's
coworkers.
true.
They go out, they spend the weekends playing tennis and enjoy hobby together. I can
Hmm.
give you a really good example. Actually, my wife is the
Hmm.
one of ex-coworkers whom I
Oh,
met
wow.
in my first company. Yeah. So both she and I decided we liked Japanese pop culture. We liked Japan. We enjoyed
Hmm.
Japan. That we decided to take a job um, in our early 20s, mid 20s to move to Japan.
Hmm.
And because we have that shared background about being an Asian Americans living and
Hmm.
working, and we were able to become really close. And then,
Yeah.
we started dating and then we started getting married and then now we're back
Mm.
here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's one example, but I also have been keeping in touch with many other friends that I've met
Wow.
during my time in Japan. Yeah.
That sounds very nice. Okay.
Mm.
And have you seen any like major changes here in the market and maybe with what the kind of people are there in Japan now compared
Mm.
to when you were here in 2013?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good it's also difficult to tell because I also got older, so
Yeah.
it's also me personally growing and changing as well.
Hmm.
But I think it's definitely the number of foreigners
Yeah.
foreign workers have grown since 2013.
Okay.
I think it was for me, back in 2013 was a very rare opportunity for recent college graduates to
Hmm.
be given a visa sponsorship, work visa, to
Uh-huh.
come to Japan and work. Back then there were a lot of more senior executives and senior, more um, sort of later stage in their career moving to Japan.
Hmm.
But at least back in my first stay in Japan, there were a lot. It was much difficult to get like a visa sponsorship for young professionals to move to
Yeah.
Japan.
Yeah, I
But
can.
I've seen that hurdle has gotten, maybe less.
Hmm.
That became less of a bottleneck.
Hmm.
It's also a lot more diverse in terms of the backgrounds that people come from, in terms of the
Okay.
country.
Okay.
Uh, and then so I think it's a really positive change
Hmm.
uh, that we are seeing. That
Hmm.
being said, I do think on the other flip side is
Hmm.
the flip side is, now there's a new concern about yen being
Yes.
not as strong as before.
Yeah.
So that became more of a concern for people
Mm.
to move to Japan, where
Yeah.
10 years ago, it was less of a barrier to making a decision to come to Japan because um, yen was definitely stronger than now
Yeah.
in
For sure.
2024.
Hmm.
But I do think based on my personal experience, if it's about staying in your home country, whether
Hmm.
the States or India or China, wherever you're from,
Hmm.
versus having taking an opportunity to challenge in
Yeah.
Japan in a brand new country. I
Mhm.
do think the experience goes way beyond like the money or the salary that you can get.
Yeah.
I would to utilize my experience in Japan to really advance my career.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I think there's a lot more what you
Yeah.
can gain
Hmm.
than just the pure like the numeric value that you
Monetary.
get.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
see.
Mm.
Then, do you have any advice or tips for young professionals who are thinking of going to Japan or who wants to, yeah, start looking for a job here in Japan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's once again, I think it's if it's about staying in your home country versus moving to Japan for a new
Hmm.
challenge. Of course, it's a very big decisions, but I think it could be very scary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's definitely worth a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
especially long term. So I would sort of consider the positive side of taking such challenge.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the most important thing to make that into a success is sort of envision like a clear like objective or goal,
Mm.
usually 2, 3, 5 years.
Okay.
Japan is a really comfortable and fun, convenient country,
Mm-hmm.
that that people can enjoy both work and life.
Mm-hmm.
But it could also mean that many years can pass by really
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
So having like a set goal definitely does help
Mm-hmm.
uh, in terms of achieving what you want by coming and working in Japan. For me, I what I wanted to achieve in Japan the last time was I wanted to apply to
Mm-hmm.
a business school, and I thought in 2 years, after 2 or 3 years in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
I thought by moving to Japan, I could stand out among the many great
Uh,
candidates.
yeah.
It made my story more interesting when
Mm.
it comes to applying to
Yeah.
competitive top business schools.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my goal even before coming to Japan. I
Mm-hmm.
started to prepare, okay, this is what I'm going to write in my essays, this is what I'm going to achieve in 2 years, and then this is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to present myself. So yeah, having like obviously that doesn't have to be your goal, but
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's taking JLPT or making saving X number of money
Mm.
um or changing job after 2 years, I think it's always good to have like a set goal or
Mm-hmm.
set in 2, 3 years. So
Mm-hmm.
you can look back and say, oh, by moving to Japan, I was able to achieve this XYZ things.
Mm. Great.
And
Thank you for
yeah.
that advice. Then maybe moving on to just a bit social part of your life here in Japan. You mentioned that Japan and Tokyo is a fun place to be.
Mm,
So, are there things you like to do in your free time? Maybe it's
mm,
a bit difficult now that you have a very young baby, but
mm.
yeah, what do you like to do in your free time?
Oh yeah. So one of the things I did last year, before moving to Japan, but was travel Japan,
Oh,
different Japan through bullet trains or Shinkansen.
mm-hmm.
I think um, maybe only maybe there's Japan is one of the best, if not the best country in terms of train travel,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a non-Japanese citizen or foreigners. You have access to like JR Pass, which is
Yeah,
unlimited transit, right?
yeah.
So I was able to really enjoy my trip, going to Tohoku region all the way
Mm.
to Aomori, and I took a really beautiful scenic trains and
Mm.
traveled like 7 days straight. And then another time I traveled Kansai using train. I traveled Hokuriku using train, and that has been a really fantastic time. Because I used to live in Tokyo,
Mm.
I wanted to really experience different parts of Japan,
Yeah.
and that's been sort of the most fun parts of Japan. And I hope even with kids, I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to enjoy those trips, long
Mm-hmm.
distance train
Yeah.
trips through Japan, because there's also a lot of trains that are
Yes,
geared toward kids and family. Yeah.
that's true.
Mm.
And I think that a lot of people do have the image that Tokyo is very busy and it can
Mm.
be crowded and maybe a bit overwhelming for some people. How do
Mm.
you feel about the busyness about in Tokyo?
That's interesting. I think one of the reason why Tokyo seems very busy is because uh, trains are above the ground.
Yes.
But on the flip side, compared to many major cities in the world,
Mm-hmm.
Tokyo, for the size of the city, it doesn't have that many cars. Um,
Um,
like cars, vehicles,
uh-huh.
especially compared to New York or LA, where cars are everywhere and traffic
Oh,
jam is
really?
everywhere. and even to a closer city like Seoul or you know other major Asian cities, there's less
Mhm.
cars. So I do feel like Tokyo is busy, but it could also be very quiet as long as you are not next to like a
Yeah.
major train stations. So something, I actually enjoy the quiet side of Tokyo very often, and um, but yeah, it depends on where you come from, but
Mhm.
Tokyo may not be as busy or as loud as you think. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Mm.
Then maybe my last question. Do you have any things, what can I say, like a Japanese culture that you've grown to like or maybe dislike?
Oh, Japanese culture that I've grown to like or dislike. Um, Japanese cultures that I've grown to like or dislikes. I, I guess the dining experience in Japan is so fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so, eating out in Japan could be really fun. It could be very affordable, but very
Mhm.
luxury. So like, for example, in the States, there's a culture of tipping waiters.
Mhm. Yeah.
Despite, not so good service, you still have to tip the waiters.
Yeah.
In Japan, you go to both, you know, small mom and pop shop or fine dining, there's no tips. So I've
Mhm.
been really enjoying the dining experiences.
Mhm.
Um, that being said, I think dining experience still can be very overwhelming to foreigners
Yeah.
because a lot of the authentic Japanese place don't have menu provided in English or other
Yes.
languages, or they don't have pictures. And I think in the US, a lot of the menus have
That's
pictures.
true. Mm.
So this if even if you have a language barrier, there's like there's a way to get around.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I'm trying to sort of learn more Japanese so I have no problem enjoying all the good dining experiences in Japan. But sometimes it's hard because it's all in kanji,
Yeah. Yeah.
complicated kanji.
Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Then that was it from my side. Is there something you would like to share from you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I mean, feel free to connect me via LinkedIn, reach out to me via LinkedIn if you're interested in learning more about, tech careers in Japan or product management in Japan.
Mhm.
Love to provide my sort of firsthand experience. So yeah, looking forward to meeting new people.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.